Does your vision for business match what you see happening on a daily basis? Welcome to Jim White's Circle of Success show, where Jim White brings it all together. For over 30 years, Jim White has worked with organizations and individuals worldwide to help develop and implement excellence. You'll get the inside story on how to create innovative leaders from one corner of your company to the other. Get everyone on your team contributing to the bottom line. Keep building revenue, even when the economy and your customers have flatlined, and more. Jim White's Circle of Success show covers it all, from communication to contract negotiation, from personal fulfillment to revving up cash flow. It's not about theories, it's about showing what works and how to make it work for you. And now, here's your host, Jim White.
Thank you and welcome to the show. Can counterinsurgency strategies be used to fight urban gangs? That question was discussed in early 2009 between the mayor of the city of Salinas, California, and the provost at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and Congressman Sam Farr. After the discussion, it was determined that the question was worthy of further investigation. A team of students led by Professor Rothstein undertook the project. In studio today is Mayor Dennis Donohue from the city of Salinas, California, and Professor Rothstein to discuss the results. We'll be right back after this message. You're watching the Circle Success Show with Dr. Jim White.
The current business climate is becoming more and more complex. CEOs on the cutting edge know they must explore strategies to understand and command the marketplace. The first annual JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will enable CEOs and business leaders to explore strategies applicable to an ever-increasing complex environment. A unique opportunity to become educated in complexity theories and inspired to turn those theories into real business strategies with a focus on earnings, market share, and brand improvement. A powerful format that is a blend of the World Economic Forum, the Clinton Initiative, and TED Talk. Hosted by best-selling author and world-recognized management consultant Jim White, Ph.D. Along with many specialized business authorities, you will explore strategies for a complex world. The much-anticipated JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will be held in the beautiful Hayes Mansion in San Jose, California, September 25th and 26th. Visit us online at jlwceosummit.com.
We're back.
It's good to be here.
Professor Rothstein.
My pleasure.
Good to
Mayor
see
Donohue.
you. Good to be here.
I tell you, we had lunch, or dinner, that
We
was
had
dinner,
Yep.
with our mutual friend, Ted Lewis, also a Naval Postgraduate School professor. And I was fascinated with your story. And the story starts in 2009.
Right.
And you'd been mayor 3 years at that time?
Just over 2 years at that
Over
point.
2 years
Yes,
at that point. So in 2009, the year it started off, if I recall, 6 or 7 homicides, gang-related in 2009.
I think this early in January,
In
in 1 week, we had 7 homicides. And it was just very, very clear that we needed to accelerate our efforts and go to the next level in terms of how we were going to try and address this problem as a community.
So the discussion that you had with the provost of the Naval Postgraduate School, and Congressman Farr was involved in that
Yes.
at that time, right? And then there's students of all walks of life
Right.
at the Naval Postgraduate School, and the project was led by Professor Rothstein, right?
Yes.
Right. What was the intent? I mean, what was the to you, Professor Rothstein? What is it we were attempting to do, and what did we do in working with the city of Salinas in this counterinsurgency and how it could be used in the urban gang conflicts, if you will?
Well,
I like that word, conflicts.
It wasn't clear that what we knew about counterinsurgency was applicable to the problem in Salinas. I got a call from the provost, Leonard Ferrari, and he asked me to come to a meeting in his office, and he said, hey, I just had a meeting with the mayor of Salinas. I've been talking to Sam Farr, they have this problem, and they asked if we at the Naval Postgraduate School could do something about it. So what Leonard Ferrari did is he instinctively called the department that I'm in, the Defense Analysis Department, who has been studying and looking at issues of insurgency for 20 years. Leonard Ferrari, I think, went to the right department and he said, "Can you do something?" And we weren't sure that we could. We knew about irregular warfare, we knew about counterinsurgency, but we weren't experts in what went on in inner cities. So the first thing we had to do is to determine whether or not our knowledge was applicable to the problem in Salinas. So the first meeting we had with the leaders in Salinas, we brought them to NPS, and we really gave them a series of presentations on what we knew about counterinsurgency. And then we asked them to determine if it had application to the problems that they faced. Almost everybody at that point said that the overlap between our expertise and the problems in Salinas, the overlap was almost complete. So that was the beginning of the relationship and the beginning of our ability to try to help, our willingness and ability to try to help.
Who was involved in that meeting that Professor Rothstein was involved in? You know, was it the city manager? Was it primarily the law enforcement and yourself?
Well,
Who was leading that?
initially we brought police department leadership, so the chief of police, a couple of the deputy chiefs, one of whom just got sworn in as we speak today. He's enjoying his first hour on the job as our new police chief. Then Deputy Chief McMillan, or Commander McMillan. The city attorney was also present, and I do believe the city manager also accompanied us. And I would just echo what Hai said. We weren't sure either. What we didn't know was, though we fully expected when people first heard we were going to explore things with the Naval Postgraduate School, you know, there's a real red meat crowd around this problem, and they were expecting we were going to bring in a black ops operation, and, you know, Navy SEALs would be under the cover of night in various parts of the city taking care of the problem. We knew that's exactly what we weren't looking for. And as the dialogue progressed, it became very clear, I think to both parties, that there really was an exact overlap with what counterinsurgency and how you deal with that really is, and what our needs were as a community.
At the end of 2009, 29 homicides.
Yes.
And if I recall, the majority of those homicides direct
Right.
relation to the gang activity.
All gang related,
All
yes.
gang related. So when we started to study, walk us through. Walk us through exactly what you were doing, and I'm going to go ahead and hold this up now. I mean, the results, Dave, if you can get this. This is a great book, and we're going to have a website, and with a link on the website on this. But as I started going through this book, I mean, it's so well written. But this is a result, right? We're getting ahead of ourselves. This is a result of the project study, right?
Well,
It's one of the results.
One
yeah,
of the
it's,
results.
it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's not the result. It's
Okay.
one of the documents that we thought we could put together
Okay.
for distribution in Salinas and beyond. So where communities were facing the same problems that Salinas was facing, they can read this book. And it really just talks about what we know in our department about counterinsurgency. And it asks the reader to make the correlation between our knowledge and their particular problem. We've never claimed to be experts in gang violence, and we still don't claim to have that expertise. But we do think that what we know is relevant to cities that have you know, this serious problem, and how they can.
Okay.
The book talks about how they can go about trying to solve that problem.
We have an audience nationwide and worldwide.
Right.
So other municipalities can certainly learn from this
Right.
project, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I've already received a couple of emails today as a result of publicizing the show. And the email read this way: how do we get access to the Naval Postgraduate School in other parts of the nation? And my email responded was, I have no idea, but I will inquire. So we'll address that as we go through the show, where that's even possible. Another email says, how can you use active duty military personnel in public sector? Well, I responded, and I hope I responded correctly, that they were students. And it was a student venture in working with the city of Salinas. Did I do that right?
Well, I mean, there are some real limits to what the Defense Department can do inside the United States. And all we have done is try to provide advice and planning assistance to the city of Salinas. We're not directly involved in anything. I mean, Salinas did the planning, did the analysis, did the planning, produced the action plan. We helped them go through the procedures and the process to do that, because the military is very, very good at systematic planning. So we assisted there. So, we're not doing anything, on the streets. I might add that the faculty that has been involved has really done this on a voluntary basis.
Right, and I think that's the key, for our audience to understand, right?
And I think that's terribly important to note, that the Naval Postgraduate School is a member of the Monterey County community.
Right.
Many of their students and faculty live in Salinas, so this is something they wanted to do. And in fact, and I think this tracks along with how you ultimately fight this problem, the community has to continue to come together wave after wave after wave. And one of the best stories, I think, in Salinas is how so many people within Salinas, but indeed Monterey and Monterey County, and institutions of all type, said, hey, we want to help. So I just want to echo and give kudos to the Naval Postgraduate School. The provost facilitated, but they've done, this has been essentially a volunteer effort. Now, if students had seen fit to make that part of their studies and contribute papers, certainly Salinas is the better, and I think you yourself read the book. This is a national primer. You can access the Naval Postgraduate School per se, but the reality is you got the book. It's that good, and it's that good a primer.
I agree. I think the book is excellent, and as we were sharing prior to going on the air, I think there are certain sections in there that's very appropriate for the private sector as well.
Right.
So to all of the people that volunteered for that,
Right.
I mean, it's you can just read it and just look at the commitment and the passion.
Right, and it's all there.
And it's all there, and it's for the world to enjoy as well, and especially within the United States and our borders. We got to get a quick break.
Sure.
And we come back after the break. My favorite word, we're going to drill down on certain parts of the book, and what we really want to accomplish by the time we conclude today is just tell the story, just weave the story, and just talk about the measures and the progress and how we're measuring. How can we really, is this working or not working? Is that fair enough?
It's fair enough.
Good. You're watching Circle Success Show, and we'll be right back after this message.
This segment is brought to you by Circle of Success, a dynamic, year-long intensive management and leadership development process designed to help individuals and organizations reach their goals quickly. A customized process addressing specific needs and identifying the critical opportunities particular to the individual and organization, with results measured in increased revenue, increased net profits, and increased equity. The Circle of Success, inspiring excellence in people. At jlwhiteinternational.com/circles. This segment is brought to you by 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit. 12 O'Clock High is one of the undisputed best movie classics of all time. It is also one of the best business learning tools available. The movie rated #1 by top executives for its influence on their management styles. Now, the inspiration of the 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit, an innovative one-day event and 30-day follow-up where you will quickly see what's working and not working on the front lines of your company and in your own leadership style. Learn more at 12high.com. That's 12high.com.
We're back with Mayor Dennis Donohue from the city of Salinas, California, and Professor Rothstein. And we're talking about a book and a study, and I know as we get through the different segments, we'll start bringing it all together. But we're talking about a project that was undertaken in 2009 for this, in cooperation with the city of Salinas, to understand if counterinsurgency would work in urban guerrilla. What did I say? Guerrilla? Gangs, right?
Well, gangs, yes.
Kind of the same thing, right?
Well, there's some similarities, it turns out.
Similarities, exactly. Mayor Donohue, in this book, one of the authors talked about the young male problem.
Right.
You have any idea what she was talking about? Where are we going with that?
Well, I do. I think she was trying to make the point that where you have disaffected youth, particularly young men throughout the world, there can be a correlation to a lot of violence. You know, in the Middle East, that might play out in the form of terrorism. In our community, that easily plays out. That can often play out in the form of young people joining a gang to gain a sense of belonging, or because they lack hope. You know, occasionally when we get a little philosophical about this problem in Salinas, one could easily have the discussion, do we have a gang problem or do we have a fatherhood problem? For instance, when some of the work High is doing and that we're implementing in the Hebron Family Center, the zip code that has the highest preponderance of young people, there are reports as high as 50% of families without fathers. Mm-hmm. And not coincidentally, a lot of young men without a father figure, without a mentor, end up in gangs. So this issue of disaffected youth plays out all over the world, as we've seen. In Salinas, it most overtly plays out in the gang issue.
The father issue, or the lack of,
Right.
in your city, I mean, it takes a whole bunch of folks. It's just not a policing problem, right? And we don't want to understate the issue or overstate it either.
Right.
That it's absolutely critical that we have positive influences on these young men, because young men being young men, as the author writes here, they're going to try stuff. And if you do not get I'm going to use the word love, because that's what it is.
Right.
If you do not get love and support within the family unit, you're going to seek it elsewhere.
That's right. And I would say two things real quickly. No one is suggesting, just because there's a problem in the family, at any point that ever becomes a legitimate excuse to pick up a gun and to engage in violence, because frankly, far too many people with the same background and the same issues don't do that. They keep moving forward. So no one's saying it's an excuse in any way, shape, or form. On the other hand, it's a reality. And if we're going to try and solve the problem, that's why you hear over and over this need to have a multi-dimensional approach. And so it's important to understand that could be one of the setup pieces that creates the problem. And around this issue, you always have to be doing the things you need to do today, but ultimately, and this is what I love about Salinas, we absolutely believe we can make great progress on this issue over the course of time if we get at the root causes. And so that's why we do have to be doing the things we have to do on law enforcement, but we also have got to understand what our prevention and our intervention issues are.
You just swore in a new police chief. I mean, how timely was that for the show of the day and the new chief? And
Yes.
and he comes within the ranks, right? So
He
so
comes
you
within the
understand.
ranks, and he is well versed in everything we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, yeah. As you go forward in the city of Salinas, and as we are trying to communicate with these gang leaders,
Right.
do we actually know who they are, the leaders of these groups? Do we know who they are by name? Can we identify them?
We can identify some of them. I think one of the things Hy would echo, and I'll just throw it over to him with him, is who we might identify today, even if we address today, gangs are pretty good at replenishment.
Yeah.
So they're dynamic organizations. So what we know today, even if we address it today, there's a pipeline.
And I love that because we did a show recently on the drug cartel with another one of your colleagues at the Rodrigo Gomez, and we were talking about innovation, and they are innovative. So I saw the smile on your face, Hy, when we were talking about that. So what else can we say about these? I mean, they're organized.
Yeah, they're organized. I mean, one of the counterinsurgency models that we presented initially to Dennis and his team at Salinas was this model, if you will. Just think about a box, a black box, and there are inputs that go into that box, a variety of inputs, and there are circumstances, environmental factors. And what that box does is it produces gang violence, okay? So all of the inputs that go into those boxes are a series of variables that at the end result in violence. One of those variables is the recruitment of people. And there are guns and money and all of that that goes into the box also. Training, organization, and so forth. What happens most of the time, not only on the military side, but even in cities undergoing gang violence, they focus on the product, the violence. The idea is to attack as many of the variables going into the box to reduce the output. So just going after a gang leader may not be it may not be critical, or it may not be sufficient in itself to solve the problem. It won't be sufficient by itself to solve the problem. What you need to do is figure out which among all of those variables you can get at, and then which ones will really make a difference to the output, which is violence. So one of the things that we did in a very comprehensive way, and this essentially brought in all of the actors in Salinas, all of the various agencies from city, local, state, and beyond. We brought them into the planning process to see what they can bring to bear to influence or to affect each of those variables so that the output at the end is less violence.
To include clergy,
Yes.
who's involved in this process.
Right.
So, we're what, 3 years into this project? So, how's it? How you think it's going?
I think we're doing well, but you mentioned the police chief. We just swore him in, and I spoke for a couple minutes, and I mentioned to the audience that I've been thinking about the Latin word magus a lot these days, and that means more. I think we're doing very well, but we still want to do more. But we're going in the right direction. So, for instance, in terms of the program that we're implementing, thanks to Hy's group, and referring to the book, The Diamond Counterinsurgency chapter. What I love about that chapter, it talks about community support, and it is a sum-zero game. Either you're supporting the authorities, aka the good guys, or you're supporting either actively or through your omission the other team. Community support, which Chief McMillan also talked about today, there's a role for law enforcement, and no one should make no mistake, there is. But there's also a role for the community. So we always want to build more community support. But we're on the right track.
Yeah, we're on the right track. We got to get another break in. You're watching the Circle Success Show with Dr. Jim White, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Business climate is becoming more and more complex. CEOs on the cutting edge know they must explore strategies to understand and command the marketplace. The first annual JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will enable CEOs and business leaders to explore strategies applicable to an ever-increasing complex environment. A unique opportunity to become educated in complexity theories and inspired to turn those theories into real business strategies with a focus on earnings, market share, and brand improvement. A powerful format that is a blend of the World Economic Forum, the Clinton Initiative, and TED Talk. Hosted by best-selling author and world-recognized management consultant Jim White, Ph.D. Along with many specialized business authorities, you will explore strategies for a complex world. The much-anticipated JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will be held in the beautiful Hayes Mansion in San Jose, California, September 25th and 26th. Visit us online at jlwceosummit.com. This segment is brought to you by Circle of Success, a dynamic, year-long intensive management and leadership development process designed to help individuals and organizations reach their goals quickly. A customized process addressing specific needs and identifying the critical opportunities particular to the individual and organization, with results measured in increased revenue, increased net profits, and increased equity. The Circle of Success, inspiring excellence in people. At jlwhiteinternational.com/circles.
We're back with Mayor Donohue and Professor Rothstein. Prior to the break, we were talking about the model you were going through, and also about the win-win. So,
Okay, the first thing I just need to tell you that the inspiration for the book is a colleague and professor at MPS named Michael Freeman, a very talented young man. So he is the primary driver for the book.
Okay.
And the chapters were written by, again, our colleagues within the Defense Analysis Department. The model that then is talked about, the counterinsurgency model, again, is a model by another colleague, Gordon McCormick, who's been looking at the counterinsurgency issue for 20, 25 years. And really the model has the government on one side and a counter-government, or in this case, gangs on the other. And both sides are really trying to get the attention and control over the population. And it's especially important in dealing with gangs or trying to execute counterinsurgency, because the population is the entity that will provide you the information that you need to target either gangs or insurgents. Without that intelligence, without that information, the force that you will use can be random and can actually wind up affecting the population in a way that they will not provide additional information, and they will not have trust within the government. In other words, if you become too physical, too violent, target the wrong people, and that's very easy to do without the proper intelligence. So the point is that the government and the counter-government, both sides need to capture, control, and eventually trust of the population to properly target the enemy. So in this case, the government of Salinas, the police, who are really their arm, strong arm, if you will, need to be able to operate in and amongst the population in a way that the population trust the city and the police. And if they trust the city and the police to operate effectively, efficiently, honestly, and with minimal force, that's the first step towards getting the information they need to go after the gang members. Dennis also mentioned this issue of strong win. And again, this is another concept that Gordon McCormick put together. And it's important to recognize the difference between a weak win, which is just controlling what's going on in the city. In other words, being capable of putting enough police on the streets so that you can dominate and reduce gang violence. That's a weak win. A strong win is where you not only dominate the streets, in other words, gang members cannot operate freely, but you also control the political space. In other words, the population tends to side more with the government and less with the gangs. A complete win, though, incorporates everything in a strong win, but also eliminates, alleviates all of the underlying factors that result in gang violence. You know, the economic issues, the family issues, the social issues. That type of win actually requires a mobilization of the population to be part of a solution rather than neutral, or in some cases part of the problem. And Kelly McMillan, when he was sworn in today, talked about the role of the population and how important they are in the ultimate success in Salinas, and that's part of this model that then is talked about and part of what's necessary to get trust, to earn the trust of the population.
What a great explanation. What in trust, and it's interesting. This is so dear to my heart because in business we have models where we'll track stock market prices by trust or lack of,
Right.
and how we can do that. So it's so important. Short segments coming up, so we got to get in another break so we can pay the bills for our national audience. So we'll be right back after this message. You're watching the Circle of Success Show, and we'll be right back after this message.
This segment is brought to you by 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit. 12 O'Clock High is one of the undisputed best movie classics of all time. It is also one of the best business learning tools available. The movie rated #1 by top executives for its influence on their management styles. Now, the inspiration of the 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit, an innovative one-day event and 30-day follow-up where you will quickly see what's working and not working on the front lines of your company and in your own leadership style. Learn more at 12high.com. That's 12high.com.
We're back. Let's pick up on this strong win. Dennis, we were talking off camera here, so you have
Well, I
to
think
talk
the
about
strong
that.
win concept is really important to lay out clearly for a community because I think in the end what brings communities together is that ultimately I do believe we want to follow our better angels and we're aspirational. I know Salinas is, and indeed throughout the country and the world, all our greatest desire is to be peaceful, but that needs to be a substantive, enduring reality. And so we were chatting that, you know, in Salinas, obviously, we hope to get a reduction, a cessation of violence. And the complete win concept, you know, and it was interesting to hang out with Hai and his crowd for a bit, and, you know, you kind of hear how some of this was applied in Afghanistan or Iraq, and as an American, you kind of go, well, of course we'll get a strong win. You know, and you kind of watch Afghanistan and go, well, that's a little harder to control the political landscape there. And then you see the purple thumbs and you go, well, maybe Iraq will get there. And then we go, of course, in America, that's not a problem. Or is it? We do gridlock and polarization. So creating a coalition where we're all together around being peace, strong wins we ought not take for granted because we've got to get through that to get to this pursuit and focus on a complete win and social transformation. And I always note that our good friends in San Jose are considered the best practitioners of a community addressing the gang issue, but I also note they are fortunate enough to have in their midst the greatest economic engine in terms of innovation and investment, frankly, the world's ever seen, the Silicon Valley. So is it a coincidence that that's considered one of the safest cities in the country? Because there is opportunity and there is hope. So again, this goes back to what Hai said earlier in the show. What are all the things that go into that black box? You know, even though we have a $4 billion ag industry, a great tourism industry, and I think we could make a pretty fair case that our home court advantage is paradise, we still have chronic unemployment in the double digits throughout Salinas and the Salinas Valley. So, so we do need to get to that higher economic ground to ultimately solve this problem and create those pathways of opportunity. So that's why I think Gordon McCormick's article is so important locally. And then when you and I first had dinner, we were chatting about sitting at the Panetta Institute and really being struck by listening to Fran Townsend and Dennis Ross talk about projecting American power abroad. And the reality is that's predicated on we are a strong economic entity. So no one should ever take a strong win for granted because, you know, short of that, it is tough to get at any objective you may have, whether it's your local community or national.
No, it's paint a canvas. Anything goes. And I agree with a strong economic engine. But if we had a strong economic, what would the impact, would this change, make all the gangs go away if we had a strong economic engine?
Well, I think ultimately there's going to be this thing called human nature, and I'll leave it to others or another show to get into the evil, good and bad, or whatever. I think Salinas, by virtue of our history, the fact we let this get too big, that proximity to two prisons, our geography, there's a lot of things that suggest this is something we're always going to have to be attentive to. But there are a lot of things that suggest that we can really move this to a much better, acceptable place, and that we can live in relative peace. And that's the ball I like to keep my eye on.
And you've done such a great job of that for so many years.
Well, the one thing I can very safely assure everyone, I learned a long time ago that I is a necessary vowel, but it's not a good political vowel. That's always teamwork.
Just a true politician here. That's great. Hi. Same question to you. Economics, we've got plenty of money in the world. Is that going to make the evil go away? And I keep coming back to that for a reason. So
well,
just your thoughts on it.
I mean, Dennis is right. I mean, you're not going to stop violence. It's part of the human condition. But the idea of getting it down to a tolerable level, a manageable level, is where you want to move. On the economic side, when in looking at this weak, strong, and complete win, it's very possible that there are cities, and I'm not sure if Salinas is one of them, but where you can't get to a complete win, at least not in the foreseeable future. But you go as far as you can, and you take advantage of opportunities as they arise. We don't know a lot about the future, but we can manage the future, and there's a chapter that talks about managing chaos. But if you can get to a strong win and sustain that, that's good. And then if circumstances change, if environmental factors change, and you can move towards a complete win, as long as you have a mechanism to exploit changing situations in the environment to hopefully get to that complete win, you do it. But I think you have to be very realistic, and there are really limitations to how far you can go, because I'm not sure if Salinas can be a Silicon Valley. But I know there's plenty of...
Sure, you can't. Okay.
That's a different show, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it at the drop of a hat.
But there's plenty of opportunity in Salinas. There's plenty of human resources there. The agricultural industry, as Dennis talked about, is second to none.
Yeah.
And it's and this is a great part of the country to live. So there are all kinds of positive factors and features towards moving.
Dennis?
Well,
forward.
One of the things I want to quickly throw in, and again, when a lot of folks... and I encourage it, I'm not sure the Naval Postgraduate School has this much time on their hands, but I mean, it's a marvelous campus, but believe me, this book is a gold mine. And again, I go back to Gordon McCormick's article, and he talks about how, and again, this framing is wonderful, that things reconstitute themselves. I have yet to observe the gangs or the gang leadership go, oh, Salinas and the Naval Postgrad, they must be really serious about this. Yeah. We'll be giving up now. That's not happening. Right. And it reconstitutes. So, for instance, folks ask about how are we doing? For the last couple of years, the homicide count was better, but I think it's really important that folks know that the homicide count simply cannot be the sole measure on this problem, because that tends to be gang on gang, but gangs are economic enterprises. They're more than happy to come over to Carmel and rob you, or sell kids drugs and that sort of thing. Right. So it's really important for folks to understand that this is a much broader discussion than just the homicide account. Now, I recognize that gets in the headlines, but for instance, one of the things that started happening this year was that number went back up, but the shootings weren't up. The lethality was, and as it turns out, some of that was a change in tactics. Instead of a drive-by, you had more of a walk-up. So frankly, so those are some of the nuances of these things that really need to be understood. And that's why it's very important not to be focused on just the homicide issue, because that could be, there for the sake of a couple inches either way. What is 14 homicides might be 20 homicides, or this change in tactics. So it really is important, I think, to understand that black box that Hai is talking about, and what are all the inputs, and how do you become a more fundamentally peaceful community? Because the homicide account cannot be the sole indicator of a community at peace.
Another break.
Okay.
You're watching the Circle of Success Show with Dr. Jim White. We'll be right back after these messages.
Business climate is becoming more and more complex. CEOs on the cutting edge know they must explore strategies to understand and command the marketplace. The first annual JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will enable CEOs and business leaders to explore strategies applicable to an ever-increasing complex environment. A unique opportunity to become educated in complexity theories and inspired to turn those theories into real business strategies with a focus on earnings, market share, and brand improvement. A powerful format that is a blend of the World Economic Forum, the Clinton Initiative, and TED Talk. Hosted by best-selling author and world-recognized management consultant Jim White, Ph.D. Along with many specialized business authorities, you will explore strategies for a complex world. The much-anticipated JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will be held in the beautiful Hayes Mansion in San Jose, California, September 25th and 26th. Visit us online at jlwceosummit.com. This segment is brought to you by Circle of Success, a dynamic, year-long intensive management and leadership development process designed to help individuals and organizations reach their goals quickly. A customized process addressing specific needs and identifying the critical opportunities particular to the individual and organization, with results measured in increased revenue, increased net profits, and increased equity. The Circle of Success, inspiring excellence in people, at jlwhiteinternational.com/circles.
Right. We're back with Mayor Donohue from the city of Salinas and Professor Rothstein from the Naval Postgraduate School here in Monterey, California. And we've been having a very interesting discussion on the project, and I cannot hold this up enough. It's Gangs and Guerrillas. And by close of business today, I like to say that, you're going to have a link on our website, and so you can go download this great material. And for all of our municipalities around the country to avail themselves of this wonderful work that the city of Salinas has been doing at the Naval Postgraduate School. What else? How's that for throwing it out? What else? What else?
Well, during the break we were talking about statistics, and,
right.
And Mayor Donohue was very clear to say that you shouldn't judge a city based on the homicide rate. And he's absolutely right. If you take away the homicide rate in Salinas, it's a very safe city. And almost all of the homicides are gang-related. So if you're not a member of a gang, if you're not affiliated with gangs, if you don't associate with gangs, it's one of the safest places, to live. So the numbers are revealing, but they're also deceiving.
And you were also commenting previous Governor Schwarzenegger. I think he had a visit a few years back to the city, and that was one of his comments. Right?
I was told one of the things that caught his attention about our city was just the same point that High made, that if you take away all those homicides, it's virtually a violent-free city. But as we were also discussing, there are other elements that go into the makeup of a peaceful city, whether that's domestic violence. We would still have 50% of our young people without a father figure and that sort of thing. So what ultimately contributes to the peace of a city is a lot of other things, and the homicide count gets the headlines, and I understand that, and I accept that, and we have to go to work on that. That's the fundamental issue the community wants us to solve. But I would just simply suggest peace is a much broader, this issue of absence of conflict and all that entails, it's a much broader discussion.
How is this information any different? And I can go back years ago. I used to do a lot of consulting work in law enforcement in the early 90s. And we're always talking about community policing. Right. Is this any different from community policing to the counterinsurgency strategies? Or is it the same?
It incorporates, I think, community policing, but I think it goes a step beyond, because it really does bring in, again, all of the different agencies that a city can bring to bear on the problem. and it gets them working in a very coordinated way. Every 2 weeks in Salinas, there's a meeting that takes place where all of the contributing agencies get together. They look at what happened in the previous 2 weeks, what's projected in the next 2 weeks, and the meetings will identify people or families that have been identified in needing some sort of social services support. So it's getting to the point where individuals are being identified and referred to the proper agencies so that they can get the help they need to prevent problems from arising in the near future.
I tell you what, you just gave me chills. How many people understand? I mean, who's involved? These agencies, who are they? I mean, well, who's coming? Every 2 weeks, we have agencies to come together.
Yes.
Tell us more. I mean, this is a big deal.
Well, there's actually a couple of every 2 weeks of groups getting together, and what Hai is alluding to, every first and third Wednesday of each month at 7 a.m., I co-chair along with Judge Price, and Hai's talking about a different meeting. Some 50-plus people have been coming together for 4 to 5 years now, and they represent government, law enforcement, faith, county social services, nonprofit, and community members, and we've created a coalition. So the answer to your question is yes, it incorporates community policing, but it goes beyond that and it incorporates the community. And you have to have a working coalition and an enduring structure. And I can tell you, in an era of fiscal challenges, the new coin of the realm is, do you have a working coalition that's worth investing resources in? Because everybody's looking for an economic force multiplier with their dollar.
Right.
Hai's talking about the activity that's taking place at the Hebron Family Center, where we're standing up community leaders to address this problem and to be in the neighborhood every day. And they don't look like you and me.
Yeah.
And they're not wearing ties.
Right.
Yeah, these teams, we call them cross-functional teams. They have, police, social services, health services, and community people involved. So that as police walk their beat in the community policing role, they really refrain from trying to put the hammer on people. They try to be very helpful, and when there's a kid that's doing something wrong, rather than lock them up, we try to refer them to the right organization so that we can head them off at the pass and hopefully turn them into a productive citizen.
This group's called the Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, and that neighborhood now wants to know where their cops are. So they've those are their cops.
Absolutely.
And that's community policing at its best.
And its best. We got to get another break in. Boy, I tell you, we're running out of time, but it's just getting good. I mean, this aspect, and before we go to the break, I just wanted to reinforce something you said, Mayor Donohue. The homicides get the headlines.
They do.
And we get it. We understand why. However, what's just been shared in the last 5 minutes needs more headlines.
It absolutely does.
And what's happening, and to be able to spread that message. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You're watching the Circle Success Show, and we'll be right back after these messages.
It is brought to you by 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit. 12 O'Clock High is one of the undisputed best movie classics of all time. It is also one of the best business learning tools available. The movie rated #1 by top executives for its influence on their management styles. Now, the inspiration of the 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit, an innovative one-day event and 30-day follow-up where you will quickly see what's working and not working on the front lines of your company and in your own leadership style. Learn more at 12high.com. That's 12high.com. The current business climate is becoming more and more complex. CEOs on the cutting edge know they must explore strategies to understand and command the marketplace. The first annual JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will enable CEOs and business leaders to explore strategies applicable to an ever-increasing complex environment. A unique opportunity to become educated in complexity theories and inspired to turn those theories into real business strategies with a focus on earnings, market share, and brand improvement. A powerful format that is a blend of the World Economic Forum, the Clinton Initiative, and TED Talk. Hosted by best-selling author and world-recognized management consultant Jim White, Ph.D. Along with many specialized business authorities, you will explore strategies for a complex world. The much-anticipated JLW CEO Summit, Strategies for a Complex Business World, will be held in the beautiful Hayes Mansion in San Jose, California, September 25th and 26th. Visit us online at jlwceosummit.com.
We're back with Mayor Dennis Donohue of the City of Salinas, California, and Professor Rothstein with the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. Continue that discussion we were having off camera about recruiting. There's actually recruiters out on the streets, as we would think about in the private sector, going to recruit talent, right?
Oh, exactly. And the recruiters are normally significantly older than the people they're recruiting. They may be out of high school, 18, 19, 20, or even older, and they're trying to recruit kids, 13, 14 years old. And again, what was recently discussed at one of these cross-functional team meetings was the fact that one of these older kids, again, 19, 20, I still consider a kid, was trying to recruit some very young people in a public area. Well, there's nothing illegal about an older person talking to a younger person in a public area. But because it was clear what was going on, the police and the community leaders were able to go to the parents, and maybe parent in this case, and get them to register a complaint. So a restraining order was placed on this recruiter. He could not talk to these kids anymore because the parents didn't want it. So there was a legal mechanism that was really untried before, put in place to keep this particular recruiter away from these kids. So these are the type of innovations that, again, wind up being produced with these cross-functional team meetings and these bi-weekly meetings, or bi-monthly meetings.
Yeah. Bi-monthly meetings. I just cannot get away from I just think that's phenomenal. And that goes to where you had that policeman that recognized the behavior, what was happening, goes to the parents, encourage the parents to get a restraining order. Now, question, can these restraining orders be enforced?
Well, the policemen are looking for this guy.
Yes.
If this 20-year-old approaches, one of these younger kids, and it's a very specific restraining order, he'll be locked up. He'll be taken off the street, which is good.
So it's good. So we have another tool. So that's in place. It gives the policeman another tool.
Right. Exactly. Those the mayor and all of my peers throughout the country will appreciate. That's a great success story.
Huge.
In our community, unfortunately, with some number, the needle fluctuates between 3,500 to 5,000 gang members and associates, not all equally hardcore, not all equally violent, but scale matters. So I'm glad we got the one, but we got a few more to go. But it reinforces what High and MPS is talking about. Community involvement's a zero-sum game. If we don't have the information and the community is not involved, we can't issue the injunction. So that's the value of community policing, neighborhood policing, and being together as a community.
What I'm looking for here is this section written by Dorothy Denning.
Denning, right.
Trust and community support, right?
Right.
This goes to the heart of the discussion
Exactly.
we've been having, right? And I think the nature of trust she explains, and
it's interesting if you read newspaper accountings of violent acts, when you hear there were no witnesses or no information forthcoming, you've still got some work to do. Because trust me when I tell you, somebody always knows.
yeah.
So that's how you move the needle. Where we have information, we have quicker results and better results. And I can think back of a couple of homicides that were beyond the pale, and the community responded, and we got the results. But that has to happen more consistently. We need the entire community to want their cops, their neighborhood cops. And so it's very important to be in the community. And it's also important to recognize there are other services that are also of value. So it all works together.
You know, what Dennis said is absolutely true, but one of the things that struck me about the Salinas landscape when we first started this is, again, a city of about 150,000. And you mentioned about 3,500 gang members, and almost all of these gang members are Latino. And the Latino population in Salinas is about 65%.
65 to 75%.
65 to 75%. If you start doing the arithmetic, almost every family in Salinas either knows a gang member or has one in their own family.
Right.
So trying to get these families to provide information on gang members is a very significant challenge. And so the issue of trust needs to be able to overcome this very tight family connection. So it will continue to be a challenge in Salinas.
And what's interesting to note, for the sake of conversation, if you blow those numbers out to an average family of, let's say, 4 or 5, you could easily make a case that 10% of our families are either directly participating, enabling, or ignoring. 10% is too big, and that's what I mean. We let it get too big. And one of the elements of resistance when folks first heard about the Naval Postgraduate School, and just simply looking at the principles of counterinsurgency and applying it to a gang member, was many of those kids are somebody's children.
Absolutely.
And they absolutely did not want to think of their kids in terms of terrorists. Those were their children. So this issue of getting trust, said than done, because we're not talking about the 90% changing their behavior, we're talking about the 10%. And that's where you've got to orchestrate the change to get the community on your side. So that's why I've always appreciated this book. Hy has some terrific words in there on communications and how strategic that needs to be.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of stuff like that. We got to get another break in, and we're coming up. You're watching the Circle of Success Show with Dr. Jim White. We'll be right back after these messages.
This segment is brought to you by Circle of Success, a dynamic, year-long intensive management and leadership development process designed to help individuals and organizations reach their goals quickly. A customized process addressing specific needs and identifying the critical opportunities particular to the individual and organization, with results measured in increased revenue, increased net profits, and increased equity. The Circle of Success, inspiring excellence in people, at jlwhiteinternational.com/circles. This segment is brought to you by 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit. 12 O'Clock High is one of the undisputed best movie classics of all time. It is also one of the best business learning tools available. The movie rated #1 by top executives for its influence on their management styles. Now, the inspiration of the 12 O'Clock High Leadership and Management Summit, an innovative one-day event and 30-day follow-up where you will quickly see what's working and not working on the front lines of your company and in your own leadership style. Learn more at 12high.com. That's 12high.com.
We're back with Mayor Dennis Donohue from the city of Salinas, California, and Professor Hy Rothstein, and we have spent a fascinating 45 minutes or so on this topic of counterinsurgency and being utilized to fight urban gangs. We have 2 minutes left. Professor Rothstein, if I can talk, you were making a great point.
Yeah, I think all of the intervention strategies that have great potential in reducing gang violence are important. I think it's also very important to recognize, though, that there are certain people that just need to be taken off the street and put away for the rest of their lives. So that law enforcement requirement still exists, and those hardcore people need to be taken out of society and put where they belong. So I don't want to let anybody think that this soft approach will work without the hammer or the stick that goes with the carrots.
And I would echo that. I think all of my mayoral peers throughout the country, all of us share a desire to have peaceful communities. And one of the things I've pointed out to people, even though Salinas ended up as a bit of a poster child on this, many of my peers throughout the state of California know this is a California crisis. It's clearly a national issue. The president convened a national youth forum starting out with 6 cities throughout the country. It's a national issue. I'm a mayor that presides over a general fund that 50% of it essentially goes to police resources. So this issue I would suggest simply must be addressed, because in far too many communities it's an issue of public sustainability, civic sustainability in terms of our resources.
Hate to do this, but we're up against the clock. Thank you so much, Mayor Donohue.
My pleasure.
Professor Rothstein.
Thank you for having us.
This is a topic that we need to discuss more.
It's
And
an
we'll see
important
what we
topic.
can do.
You're watching Circle of Success Show with Dr. Jim White, and we'll see you next time.
This has been Jim White's Circle of Success. Please visit our website, jlwcos.tv. Join us next time as Jim White brings it all together on Jim White's Circle of Success.